Hello guys, here is a question that we have to try. Now, we already talked about quadratic equation. I talked about that in some previous videos. And here, we have to find the quadratic equation whose roots are 1/2 and negative 1/3. In that video, we'll be given a quadratic equation. Let's say quadratic equation of something like x. Let's say we're given something like oh my, what's going on? X squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. So definitely we know that from the methods that we already talked about, if we solve this will give us x plus 3 and x minus 1 to be equal to 0 using factorization method. So if we solve it, eventually we will get our x to be minus 3 and positive 1. So the negative 3 and positive 1 are the roots of this quadratic equation, while x plus 3 and x minus 1 are the factors. Now, the root is that value that when we put in position of x, it will be equal to, the equation will be equal. That is, the left hand side will be equal to the right hand side. Now, they already done that for us here. They already solved the particular equation that we don't know, and they got their answer as 1/2 and negative 1/3. So we have to find what that equation is. So let me take another page. Before we can get what that equation is, then we know that our roots, we have x to be equal to, that is half 1/2, and x is also equal to 1/3 at negative 1/3. So from these two things, we simply know that we have our factors as x minus half. That's the first factor, and we have x plus 1/3, which is the second factor. They must be equal to 0. Look at this. It is when we got x plus 3, we got negative 3 as our root when x plus 3 was our factor. Now, that's telling us that it is only negative 3 that we can put in this position that will make the whole of this to be equal to 0. And if we come to the second part, it is only 1 that we can put here that will make the whole of this to be equal to 0. So the same thing happens here. When we know that x is equal to half, it is only half that we can put in position of x that will make it equal to half as well. So this is telling us that before x minus half can be equal to 0, then it is positive half that we can put here, and that is what we have here. The same thing goes for the other side. It is only negative 1/3 that we can put here that will give us 0. So at this point, what we just have to do is to open up the bracket. We have to expand, and while expanding, we have x squared. That is, we take this, we multiply by x. Let us take the negative half and multiply by x again. So we have minus 1/2 of x. We take the x, we multiply by what's it called, 1/3. So we have plus 1/3 of x. Then we take the negative half, we multiply by the 1/3. So we have minus 1/6. And all this is equal to 0. Now, well, we may decide to take the addition of this fraction first before we multiply through by the LCM. And if you like, we can multiply through by the LCM before we take the addition. But I would like to multiply through by the LCM first before I take the addition. So if I multiply through by the LCM of 6, 3, 2, and 1 is 6. So I will multiply everything by 6. So if I multiply by 6, I will have 6x squared. Then here I will have negative 3x plus 2x minus 1, which should be equal to 0. So the negative 3x plus 2x will just give me what? Negative x. So the next thing I will have now as my final answer will now be negative 3x minus x. After that step, we have negative 6x squared minus x minus 6. Minus 1, so this is equal to 0. And that's the equation that we solved before we could got this. Now, there is another aspect that we have to talk about. Look at this question. If x plus 2 is a factor of x squared plus px minus 10, so we have to find p. X plus 2 is a factor of x squared plus px minus 10. We have to find p. Now, let me take you back to the first part. When we add our factor as x plus 3, don't forget our root was minus 3. When we add our factor as x minus 1, our root was 1, positive 1. So now that we have our factor as x plus 2, that's telling us that our root will be negative 2. So it is that root that we will put in position of x. And if it is truly the root, because x plus 2 is a factor, if it is truly the root, then all this equation that we have here will just go to 0. So let us work on that. So we have negative 2, that is our root, all squared, plus p p into negative 2 minus 10, and this will be equal to 0, because since it's a root, then it must be equal to 0, because the root is just the point where the line cuts the x-axis. Now, the square of negative 2 is 4, plus, no, this will be minus now, because negative 2 multiplied by p will be negative 2p. So minus 2p minus 10, and this will be equal to 0. So you can do proper simplification here. When you take 4 and you subtract it from 10, you are left with negative 6. So you will have negative 2p minus 6, and this is equal to 0. So at this point, you can add 6 to both sides, so you will have 2p, negative 2p, to be equal to 6. And for you to get your p, you just divide by negative 2. You also divide this by negative 2, so that your p will be equal to negative 3. So this is telling us that if we put negative 3 in position of this p, then we have, okay, let me write what we have. We have x squared minus 3x minus 10. So this will be equal to 0 actually, and if we solve that, we get x plus 2 as one of our factors, though we don't know what the other factor might be. There are ways to solve that again. So this will be all for this video, and if you actually like the video, then you can subscribe to the channel so that you can get notified whenever I drop more videos. And if you find it helpful, just share with your friends. Thank you.